How's it going, folks and fellas? Today, I'm going to be doing a video breaking down my transliteration slash romanization of the Russian alphabet. This is going to be called CM 2023. So, CM, Surge Media 2023, the year I made. That's the name of the romanization standard. Real quick disclaimer before we actually get into the transliteration. I don't know Russian, and I have had an interest in the Russian language for almost 10 years now, but I don't actually know Russian. I don't speak Russian. I'm not Russian in any way, shape, or form. But in the process of trying to learn Russian, I realized that a lot of the transliterations are flawed. So that's why I made my own. Just want to clarify that. So let's get right into it. To start, what is transliteration? If you don't know what transliteration is, well, here is the definition. Transliteration is a type of conversion of a text from one script to another that involves swapping letters, thus swapping letters in predictable ways. Examples include the Greek alpha to A, the Cyrillic de to D, the Greek chi to k, ch, the digraph, the Armenian ne to n, or Latin ash to the letters AE. In modern Greek, the term right here is usually translated as Hellenic Republic, but it's usually transliterated as Elliniki Demokratia. So as you can see here, these letters correspond to these Greek letters. And that's just for the purpose of, if you don't know the script, then that's a rough pronunciation guide, but obviously no transliteration is going to perfectly represent how the letters sound. So you might be wondering, why did I create a new transliteration or romanization for Russian? Plenty already exist and have for decades, and that is very true. However, every single one of those transliterations, at least the ones that are like well-known and popular, have flaws, especially the most common ones and ones used by Google Translates and other translator services. The inherent problem with all transliterations is that they aren't one-to-one. Multiple letters can represent multiple different sounds. In road signs, for example, the Latin letter Y can both represent this character and this character, or be used as the Y sound in all four of these characters right here. So, as you can see, whenever you have a transliteration, you see the letter Y, then you're just left there confused, like, okay, how do I transliterate it back? It's not simple, it's not one-to-one, you have to it's a one-way thing, right? Because the letter Y can represent so many different letters, it's only a one-way transliteration. You can't transliterate it back from the Latin version back into uh, the Russian language, at least easily. So that is the purpose of me making one, or at least that's the big purpose. So for what could be objectively the best transliteration, I have to make some rules, okay? So rule number one character in my transliteration equals one Russian character, with some exceptions. We'll get to the exceptions later. Digraphs should be simplified to singular characters to reduce ambiguity. Rule number two, characters should be at least vaguely representative of the sound they make and should be visually significant to either Cyrillic or Latin characters. If it's not really possible, or if it's not feasible, or if there's a reason to not do it, then that's kind of a different story. But I'm not going to like break the norm just to break the norm. Rule number three, all characters need to be able to be typed using a standard smartphone. My reference is the Galaxy A11. I don't know what is available in other smartphones because I don't have them, but for the Galaxy A11, these characters can all be typed using that. Some characters exist in the Latin alphabet that cannot be typed using a smartphone. Those characters will be avoided. Rule number four, reduce confusion with diacritics as much as possible. No reusing diacritics that appear at the same location as characters. That means same locations and certain other characters, right? That means that if A with circumflex is being used, we cannot use A with grave or grave accent, A with acute, A with diaresis, A with ring, or A with brev. Why? Well, the purpose of this limitation is ambiguity. These letters look similar at a glance, and I want to make it as easy to distinguish between the letters as possible. Having a bunch of letters that kind of look vaguely similar in the same spot, it might be hard to tell. Especially in handwriting, right? Rule number five, try to use as many of the basic Latin letters as possible and have a good reason for not using one. So, as you could predict, I used quite a lot of them. And the ones that I didn't use, I gave a pretty good reason as to why I didn't. So here are a couple of already existing standards, right? We have the Cyrillic obviously right here, uppercase and lowercase, and we have scholarly, ISO, GOST, road signs, ALA, BS, BGN/PCGN, and passports, all within, and these are like different years that they were developed and stuff like that, right? And for a lot of these letters, there's a lot of agreement as to what letter to use. For example, this character right here, it looks like an A and it sounds like an A, and basically everybody agrees that it's an A. So I'm not going to break the trend for no reason. Spoiler alert, this is going to be an A. Same with the B, same with the V, same with the G. At least in terms of like everybody agrees that those are the sounds that are made. But there is some agreement with certain characters. For example, with this character right here. Uh, in certain romanizations, some sources use E with diaresis. Some use the letter J and the letter O. Some use Y and O. Some use Y and E. Some use Y with E and diaresis. And some sometimes use one and sometimes use the other. So, um, obviously, in that regard, there's some disagreement. And obviously, uh, you know, it's going to be a bit complicated to decide what I want to use and to give a reason to use it. So that is just a basic, right? Moving on. Oh yeah, clarifications. Keep in mind that this is a transliteration of the Russian alphabet, simply a conversion of the Cyrillic script to the Latin script. Notably, this means that the pronunciation of the words is not going to be consistent in either case. For example, this character right here in this word or this word do not make the suspected sounds that they're supposed to make, which in this case would be the g sound, and instead make a sound similar to ha or v, so for this word and this word. So as you would and you wouldn't expect it to, right? Because you would see the G in there, or at least the G looking sound, and you would think that would make a G sound, but it doesn't. And again, as a transliteration, my job isn't to make it so that the pronunciation is consistent. It is simply just to transliterate. So you're gonna see a G in the middle of a word that's not pronounced like a G, regardless of whether or not it's the Cyrillic script or in my version of the Latin script or any version of the Latin script that is using direct transliteration. But there will be some added nuance between E, whether or not it's representing E and YE, and same with Yo, whether it's representing O or Yo. And that is the case in a couple of them that already exist. Going back to it, right? These ones with the parentheses, those do have that kind of nuance. So in road signs, if it's pronounced just then it'll be just but if it's yeah, then it'll have a Y in front of it, right? And that I'm not going to do exactly that, but that kind of nuance will be in my version. So there you go. And yeah, in road signs, oh, this is exactly what I said right here. In road signs, E equals yeah and yo equals yo after vowels and after hard sign and soft sign. So there you go. Oh, and this is there's a version 0.2, which is the main version, but there's also version 0.3, which is the simplified version of my romanization that is compatible with the international keyboard, the standard international keyboard. Of course, I have my own superior version of the international keyboard, but for the default one that's built in and that you can download from Microsoft, some of these characters can't be typed, so there's a version 0.3 that allows you to kind of have a middle ground where you can have a lot of the basic stuff, but some of the stuff that isn't applicable, you have a different version of typing it, right? And as it says right here, 0.3 is not the preferred way of typing and comes with its own problems, but at the very least, it can be written using the international keyboard because how good is a language slash transliteration if you can't type it, right? The problem comes with that multiple letters must be used to represent singular characters in Russian, making directly translating it more challenging, but still possible. All right, so here is the template. At the top here, we have the letter, oh, up here, before we have that template, up here is the letter in Cyrillic. It'll be uppercase, lowercase, and then the same in Cyrillic. I'm sorry, italics is what I meant to say. Then up at the top here, we have my main transliteration of the character. Then we have my alternate transliteration, which is compatible with the international keyboard. The mnemonic keyboard, how to type the Russian character using the mnemonic keyboard if you're using the Russian mnemonic keyboard layout. The rough pronunciation guide for English speakers. Actual pronunciation is not always consistent. Again, I'm not Russian. I don't speak Russian, but I do have a vague idea of how the letters are supposed to sound for most of them. There's one character that I don't quite know how it sounds, and I still don't understand even watching videos, but whatever. And then the name, how it's pronounced. So if this was English, then for W you would literally say W, but it's basically that, but the name of the letter and the letters, right? And then not to be confused with, so characters in any languages that look similar but are not the same. Similar characters, characters that exist in other languages that look and sound similar. And then my transliteration is influenced from, so which already existing transliteration standard or other facet of translation did I take influence from, if applicable? So let's begin. So this is in order of the Russian alphabet, which is not the same as the Latin alphabet. So the order in Russian is different from in the Latin alphabet for especially English, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Although those letters exist in Russian, in the traditional Russian alphabet, the order is different, just to clarify. So starting off with A. Letter A. It's A. As I alluded to before, it's A. My transliteration is not going to break the trend for no reason. It's A. Same with my alternate version. It's A. How do you type it with the mnemonic keyboard? The letter A. What's the pronunciation? Ah. What's the name? Ah. Similar characters are the Latin, where you have A, as I'm saying right now, A, and Greek, where you have alpha. Also for Greek, I'm gonna just only be mentioning the way that I know how to pronounce it. I know that technically there's like different ways of pronouncing it, like Tau is like tough or whatever, right? I'm gonna be pronouncing it the way that I remember, even if it's not the way that the Greek pronounce it, right? And not to be confused with none, because there's not really any characters that look like A that aren't pronounced like the way that A is pronounced in most Latin languages and in Greek. My transliteration is influenced from all because literally everybody on the universe agrees that this character should be represented by the letter A. And how can you disagree? It's just an A. So yeah, obviously its Unicode value is different, right? But it's pretty close to an A. Next up, we have be. Be is B. It kind of looks close to a B, but there's a different character that looks a lot more like a B that isn't pronounced like B. But this one, it kind of looks like a B-ish, right? But it's pronounced be. How do you type it on the mnemonic keyboard? The letter B. The pronunciation is just B. Name, be. Similar characters. I don't think there really is any. I don't think there's any characters in other languages that look like this that are pronounced like B. It's pretty decently unique. And it's not to be confused with the number 6 because the lowercase kind of looks like a 6 or like a squashed 6. In fact, I know that people who play Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, whenever they see this character, they think it's a squashed 6. It's not, it's a Cyrillic be. My transliteration is influenced from all because basically anybody who knows anything about the Russian language and transliteration agrees that this is the letter B, and I have no reason to disagree with them. Next up, we have ve. Ve is going to be transliterated as V. Same with basically everybody. Everybody agrees that this is transliterated as V. How do you type it in the mnemonic keyboard? The letter V. Pronunciation is V. Name is Ve. Similar characters are the Greek Veta or Vita. So the way we usually pronounce it is beta, but they pronounce it with a V sound for some reason. Vita. So there you go. And I will say that it says right here not to be confused with Latin B because it does look it looks a lot like a B. I mean, this looks like a B, but it's pronounced V. But I will say this though, some languages do pronounce the B's similar to V's. I think Spanish is one of them where they pronounce their B's like V's in certain scenarios. So there you go. But it is a V, not a B. Next up, we have ge. Ge is going to be transliterated as G. Mnemonic keyboard is G. Pronunciation is G. Name, ge. Similar characters are Greek, gamma. As you can see, the capital gamma looks very similar to the Cyrillic gamma, and I'm pretty sure that the Cyrillic gamma is influenced, if not directly copied from, the Greek gamma, at least the capital version. This lowercase italics version. I have no idea where that came from, but oh well. Not to be confused with none. There isn't really any characters that look quite like ge that aren't pronounced like g. My transliteration is influenced from all because everybody agrees that this letter is g, even if sometimes it's not pronounced like g. For example, in the word miyaki, it's pronounced like h rather than g. It's not miyaki, it's miyaki. Same with nivo. It's not pronounced nego, as bad as that sounds, it's pronounced nevo. All right, next up we have de. I say that it's D because it's D. It doesn't look like a D. It kind of looks like a weird looking capital A, but it's not. It is a Cyrillic D. How do you type it on the mnemonic keyboard? D. Pronunciation is de. Name de. Similar characters, none, because there isn't really a character that looks like D that is pronounced like D. I mean, maybe this lowercase version kind of looks like a D if you squint, but not really. Um, but that's like probably the closest you're gonna get, right? Not to be confused with none, because there isn't really anything that looks like a D, or looks like this that isn't pronounced like that. And yeah, anyways, next up, we have finally a new interesting character. We have yeah. So yeah is actually going to be different depending on the context that you're writing it in. So in most cases, it's going to just be written as the Latin E. However, in scenarios where in road signs you would write YE, it was going to be E with circumflex. So E by itself, pronounced eh. E with circumflexed, pronounced yeah. This isn't necessarily a new thing right here. It's just that, again, like road signs kind of already have this nuance. So we're going to be keeping that nuance, but instead, rather than adding a letter in front, we're going to be adding a circumflex on top. In order to reduce confusion between CM 2023.2 and point 3, regardless of whether or not you're going to be having this in front or if it's going to be pronounced like or yeah, you're going to be writing this character with a acute accent. And I know I said the rules about like all this stuff, right? But because of this being the way it is, we're not really worried about that. Mnemonic keyboard, it is eh. Pronunciation is yeah. Name, yeah. It's just yeah. Similar characters is the Latin E because it's pronounced like eh, and the Greek epsilon. As you can see, the capital version looks very similar, and even the lowercase version looks similar for Latin. Not to be confused with none. Pretty straightforward. My transliteration is influenced from road signs in that there's a nuance between F versus yeah, and creative interpretation. There's not really anybody that made me have the idea to have a circumflex to represent that it's yeah rather than eh. That's just my own creative interpretation. Next up, we have a very similar character, Yo. So Yo is going to be very interesting with my interpretation of it. So this is going to be O with stroke. So yeah, that's kind of weird, isn't it? O with stroke, which is a character you see in, I believe, Danish and Norwegian. Um, but in situations where you would write it as yo in road signs, you're going to be O with circumflex. So yeah, if you see O by itself, it's just the O. It's O, the letter O. But if it's O with a stroke through it or O with a circumflex, that is going to be this character in Cyrillic, which is yo. How do you type it on the mnemonic keyboard? You do Alt plus backtick and then E, or Y then O. So literally you can just type in Y and then O and you're good to go. Pronunciation is yo. Name, yo. Similar characters, none, because there isn't really any characters that look like this that are pronounced like yo or even o. Not to be confused with the Latin e with diaeresis, which you can see in a handful of languages, notably in Albanian, but even in some English words like Noel, although that's inspired by French, you'll sometimes see Noel and it's an e with diaeresis to signify that it's Noel and not like Noel or Newell or something like that, right? And very similar to and yeah, road signs and creative interpretation would be where my influence comes from. Next up, we have je. Je is going to be written as Z or Z with charon, aka hatchick. I'm going to be calling it charon, but some languages call it a hatchick and some people call it a hatchick, but I'll just say charon. but that's only in point 2. In point 3, it's going to be ZH. Again, this character right here, this Charon, does not exist in the international keyboard. It does in my version, but not in the version that everybody has access to. And for that reason, we're just going to have ZH. Mnemonic keyboard, how do you type it? It's the letter X. So if you want to type it using the mnemonic keyboard, you don't type Z and then H, you just type X. Because it kind of looks similar-ish to an X if you squint, right? The pronunciation is zh, which is similar to the S in leisure or the G in beige. It's not leaser or leisure, it's leisure. It's not beige, it's beige. That's the zh sound. Similar characters, none. Not to be confused with the Latin X character or K, because it kind of looks like two Ks back to back. In fact, some people, when they play Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, they will say it's a mirrored K, because it kind of does look like a mirrored K. Or the asterisk. It doesn't really look like an asterisk, but it has the same amount of points and all that stuff, right? But it's not an asterisk. It's not a huge asterisk. It is literally the character je. My transliteration was influenced from all of these different stuff right here. So there's a bunch of different people that agree that it's pronounced, or that the transliteration should be Z with a Charon. And I'm going to agree with them because that is already a letter that is being used to represent that sound in other languages. I think Czech is one of them. I'm pretty sure in Czech, this Z with a Charon is pronounced je, and that's going to be continuing on here with Russian. Next up, we have Z, or sorry, Z. So Z is going to be represented as Z in my alphabet, and basically everybody agrees that it's a Z. I mean, it's written as a Z in most transliterations. Similar characters, none. There isn't really anything that looks like this that is pronounced like Z. Not to be confused with the number 3, because I mean, look at this. This looks like a number 3. It's not a number 3, but look at this right here, right? This is a 3, and this is Z. So I have to imagine that if you were Russian and you were trying to like write 33Z or something like that, good luck, man. Good luck. It looks literally exactly like it. To be fair, though, in English, our at least with some variations of the way that you write it, our lowercase l looks like a capital I. Our 0 looks like a capital O. There, we have a little bit of weird stuff. Our C, our capital C, can sometimes look like a parenthesis if you have really weird handwriting. So it's not like we have zero ambiguity in the Latin alphabet, especially with the Hindu Arabic numerals, but that's besides the point. Next up, we have the letter E. In my transliteration, it'll be transliterated as the letter I. It's not pronounced it's pronounced E, even though it's going to be using an I. The mnemonic keyboard, how do you get it? You'd use it by typing the letter I. Pronunciation is E, the name is E. Similar characters, none. There isn't really anything that looks like this that is pronounced like this. Not to be confused with a Latin N, capital Y's, kind of looks like a backwards N. The lowercase the lowercase e in cursive kind of looks like a Latin U. The Greek nu in capital kind of looks like that in backwards. This character in Armenian kind of looks like that when lowercase. And this character in Georgian, when capital, kind of looks like that, but backwards. Despite that, everybody agrees that this should be transliterated as I. Even though as an English speaker, whenever you see an I, you're more likely to pronounce it as I rather than E. And granted, we do have some words that in English that have an I that are pronounced like E. In most scenarios, it's pronounced like I, but since everybody thinks that this should be translated as E, and because I can't really think of a better letter to use, I would just say get used to the fact that this is how you pronounce it, and there you go. Next up, we have I kratkoye. So I kratkoye will be transliterated as the letter J, so the Latin letter J. Why? Well, I mean, a lot of people agree with that. And the mnemonic keyboard, if you want to type it on the mnemonic keyboard, you have to type the letter J. So there is a difference between this and I. Some transliterations, they don't have that nuance, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. Some transliterations will have it so that Y represents both I kratkoye and I, but I will have that distinction because, duh, having less ambiguity is the whole point of my transliteration. So, what is the pronunciation like? It's kind of like a y sound. Again, I'm not really that good on how to pronounce it. I don't fully know how this is pronounced. I know that like in Ruski, it's kind of like has a y sound at the end there because it has this at the end. But whatever. Similar characters, none. There isn't really anything that looks like this that is pronounced like y in any other scripts. Not to be confused with N with tilde, because I mean, it kind of looks like an N with tilde, but it's not. It's E krapke, which is English for short E or short I. And then my transliteration is influenced from a bunch of different sources because although not everybody agrees that this is transliterated as J, some sources do, and the mnemonic keyboard suggests that as well. Next up, we have Ka. I don't really need to beat around the bush. It looks like a K, it's pronounced like a K, it's going to be transliterated as a K. Every source on the planet agrees that this is the letter K. Similar characters, the Latin K and the Greek kappa. I'm not going to spend too much time here because it's a K, right? Moving on. Next up is L. So L is, or however you pronounce it, I don't know if it's L or L, whatever, right? This is the letter L. That's basically what I'm saying, right? In my transliteration, it's an L. Basically, everybody agrees that this is an L, as I kind of alluded to before. Mnemonic keyboard, how you type it, the letter L. Pronunciation is L. Name, L. Similar characters, none. There isn't really anything that kind of looks like this that is pronounced like L. Although there is the Greek lambda, which, I mean, if you squint, it kind of looks like a lambda, but it's pretty distinct from a lambda. And it's not to be confused with the Cyrillic pe and the Greek p or pi. My transliteration is influenced from all because basically every facet of translation slash transliteration agrees that this is an L. Next up, we have M. M is M. It looks like an M and it's pronounced like M. It's M. Uh, Before I move on, I do want to say that it kind of looks like a cursive. Whenever the T is in cursive, the T kind of looks like an M. So watch out for that. If you're writing it down and it's in cursive or handwriting, make sure that that T isn't an M, and vice versa. But yeah, it looks similar to the Latin M, and it sounds similar, and it's very similar to the Greek mu. So there you go. Is it mu or mu? Mu or mu? I don't know, but whatever. This character. Next up, we have N. This is not an H, this is an N. So N is going to be N in my transliteration. Again, basically everybody agrees. My transliteration influenced from all because everybody agrees this is N, even though it looks like an H. Mnemonic keyboard, how do you type it? The letter N. Pronunciation, N. Not to be confused with Greek H, because it does look like an H. So I can absolutely understand if somebody were to look at this and be like, this is an H. It's not an H, it's an N. And it also looks similar to the capital version of the Greek Ida. Is that how you pronounce it? Ida or Ada? This character right here. So, although it looks like these characters, it is not pronounced like these characters. Next up, we have O. O is an O. Would you believe it, right? Yes, for whatever reason, so many different languages agree that this character right here, a circle, is O, and it's pronounced O. And Russian slash Cyrillic is no different. Similar characters, Latin, Greek, and Armenian, it's O, right? Latin O, Greek Omicron or Omicron, Armenian, I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know Armenian at all, but it looks like an O, right? Not to be confused with the number 0, because I mean, it kind of looks like a 0, but that's the exact same issue in every other language that has the O. That being said, I will say this, right? I will say this. That being said, the pronunciation isn't always O. Sometimes it's A. For example, in the Russian word хорошо. Хорошо is H-O-R-O, Sha-O. So, хорошо, but it's not horosho. It's not harasha. or horosho, it's harasho. You change midway through it, right? So just keep that in mind. Just because you see an O doesn't mean it's pronounced O. Next up, we have pe. Pe is P. It kind of looks like the Greek P, and that's where it came from, as you can see right here. Uh, Everybody agrees that this is P. There's not really any disagreement or argument there. I'm going to be sticking with the trend. This is P, and it looks like Greek P slash pi. There you go. And there isn't really anything that looks quite like it. I mean, if you squint, it kind of looks like a lowercase n, but it's not. It's P. Next up, we have R. R is R. Although it looks like a P, it is not a P, it is an R, or R. Uh, uh, Basically, everybody agrees that this is an R as well. Mnemonic keyboard says this is R. All transliterations say that this is an R. Pronunciation is R. Similar characters is the Greek rho. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. But yeah, this character right here in Greek, it looks like a P, but it's pronounced like R, just like in Cyrillic slash Russian. Not to be confused with Latin P, because it looks like a P, but it's not. Next up, we have S. S is, it looks like a C, I know, but it's an S. So if you want to type it on the mnemonic keyboard, you type in the letter S. However, S is also a dead key. So if you're trying to type it using the Cyrillic, the mnemonic keyboard, like I like to do sometimes, you will have to press S and then space if you want to get just the S. And the reason why, like I said, is because S is a dead key, because you can type in SH or SC and you can get other characters. So it is a dead key, but S is how you type it. Similar characters, it's vaguely similar to the final position sigma, which is this right here. Not obviously not the same, but it's pretty similar. And it's not to be confused with the Latin letter C, although in some languages C makes that sound. In fact, in literally the name C, you use the S sound. You don't. It's not called key. It's called C. And again, in some languages, in some contexts, it's pronounced as sa. For example, in English, you have center, or in French, you have se. So there you go. And everybody agrees that this is an S. Next up, we have te. Te is T. It looks pretty similar to a T, and it is pronounced like a T. There's not really any confusion here. Again, here, Latin, T, Greek, tau slash tough. Not to be confused with the Cyrillic M, because look at this cursive. This looks like a M, at least the Latin version of an M. Really, I should have said right here, not to be confused with Latin M, because it looks more like a Latin M than a Cyrillic M. The Cyrillic M is very pointed. This obviously has a little line right there, so that's on me. Maybe I should have rewritten it as Latin M, but whatever. But regardless, everybody agrees that this is a T, though, so there you go. Next up, we have oo. Oo is the letter U. It is pronounced like oo, however. So oo is, it looks like a Y, but it is not a Y. It is oo. Although it looks vaguely similar to the Greek uppercase upsilon, which is this character right here. As you can see, it kind of looks like it, but obviously not, because it's, converging at the same point and going down, straight down. Whereas this one, it looks more like a lowercase y, right? But it is an oo. Like, compare right here. This is the lowercase y. This is an oo. Not to be confused with the Latin y, though in some languages the letter y does make that sound. For example, in German, the letter is literally called upsilon. Upsilon makes an oo sound, sort of. So there you go. But it's not used very often in German. In fact, it's quite rare to see a Y in German, which is why in the German keyboard, it's QWERTZ and not QWERTY. And that's because, again, in that language, the character Z is far more common than the character Y. Whereas in English, Y is used at the end of words all the damn time. Like in the word my, you see, you see the letter Y quite often. Not at the beginning of words. It's still often at the beginning of words, but regardless, right? Next up, we have F. F is the letter F in English, or in Latin. Um, it's an F, right? It doesn't really quite look like an F, but it is an F. Everybody agrees that this is an F. Similar characters, you have phi? Is it phi or phi from Greek? It might not even be either, to be honest. But as you can see, this character looks very similar, and I am almost certain that the Cyrillic alphabet was influenced by Greek, because Cyrillic came later, if you didn't know that. I feel like that was pretty obvious at this point, that Cyrillic is way later than the Greek alphabet, because the Greek alphabet is before the Latin alphabet, right? But whatever, that's beside the point. Next up, we have ha. Ha is it's weird. You don't really have anything that exists in English that is pronounced like ha because we don't have that sound. If you're Scottish and loch, there you go. But yeah, that sound doesn't really exist in English, so that sound can be particularly difficult for English speakers. But this sound does exist in other languages. For example, in German, we have doch and mach. So I'm pretty used to making the sound because, as a native German speaker. But um, or as a German being my first language. Saying I'm native is kind of misleading because I'm way better at English than German, but whatever. Similar characters, none. There isn't really anything that looks like this character that is pronounced like ha. Oh yeah, on the mnemonic keyboard, if you want to type it, you press the letter H because most pronunciation transliterations will say it's KH. Um, Not to be confused with the Latin letter of X. Obviously, it looks a lot like an X, but it is not pronounced like X in any way, shape, or form. And the Greek letter chi or chi. I don't know if it's chi or chi. And it kind of looks like a multiplication sign if you kind of squint your eyes. My transliteration is influenced from this right here, GOST 7.79-2000B, where they use the Latin letter X. So I'm going to be doing the exact same thing. Next up, we have tse. Tse is the letter. It doesn't again. It's a letter that doesn't really exist by itself in English. We have words that have this sound, but this is a specific letter in Russian. So like at the end of the word cats, right? Cats, ts sound. So it's not like we don't make the sound tse ever. It's just we don't have a dedicated letter for it. So in this language, we do have a dedicated letter, and it's tse. In my transliteration, I'm going to be using the letter C. I don't know. There's not a lot of transliterations that agree with that. Honestly, most I think do TS or whatever. But I'm doing just the letter C by itself. The mnemonic keyboard, you type in C. So if you want to get the C character, you type in the letter C. But it is also a dead key because you can do C plus H and you could get the ch sound. So again, just similar with the letter S. You got to be keeping in mind if you're using the mnemonic keyboard that you have to do C and then space if you want to get just the character C by itself. Similar and not to be confused with none. There isn't really anything that looks even remotely like this, honestly. This kind of looks like a U, but like it's a bit of a stretch, right? And this, if you really squint, it kind of looks like a messed up 4, but no, there's nothing that really anything looks like it. My transliteration is influenced from the mnemonic keyboard. So yeah, most transliterations don't agree that this should be transliterated as C, the Latin letter C, but the mnemonic keyboard suggests that it should be. So I'm like, you know what, mnemonic keyboard, I agree with you. This character will be transliterated from C to C. Next up, we have che, or is it che? Che or che? I don't know. This is what it looks like. The CM 2023.2 is going to be C with Charon, but the 0.3 version is going to be C plus H because just like I mentioned with the je, the Charon does not exist in the international keyboard. So if you want to type this character, you have to type in C and then H. The mnemonic keyboard is, if you want to get it, you have to type in C and then H. If there is another way how to do it, I don't know. I haven't figured it out, but that's the only way I was able to figure it out. If you want to get this character, you have to do C and then H with the mnemonic keyboard. The pronunciation is something like che, something like that, right? Similar characters, none. It's pretty unique in its look. Not to be confused with the number 4. I mean, it kind of looks like a 4, like the 4 without the top part, the way that you would write it down, right? Um, I mean, some people write it down where it looks like this, but it kind of looks like a 4. It's not a 4. Um, and then my transliteration is influenced from all of these. Basically, all of the same people that agreed that je should be z with Charon agree that che should be c with Charon. And I'm going to be doing the exact same thing. And just like in Czech, if you this character is also used in Czech, c with Charon. In fact, I think Hatchek literally has this character in it. Um, So, like, as in the word for hat check in Czech has the hat check on a C. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, next up we have Shah. This is going to be represented by S with Charon. Just like C with Charon and Z with Charon, all the sources agree, or all these specific sources say that these letters should be written with a single character using S with Charon. But just like those other letters, this Charon doesn't exist, so SH is how you get it. Similar to the other one, if you want to type it, you have to type in S then H. Um, this is a bit misleading. I forgot, I think, I'm almost certain too. I forgot to write this down, and I should have, and I'm kind of annoyed that I only noticed now. But I'm pretty sure you can also type in the letter W with the mnemonic keyboard, and it'll also give you the Shah. So, as is implied by the name Shah, and the fact that it's S then H, it has the sh sound. So remember when I mentioned the word harasho? That's going to be having the sha. Not to be confused with the Latin W when in cursive. Obviously, by itself, this doesn't really look like a W. It's pretty distinct in its look, but the cursive version kind of looks like a W. So I can understand why someone would be like, is that a W? No, it's not a W, it's a sha. My transliteration is influenced from the same exact sources as the cha, or chie, and je. But now we get to something very, very interesting. It's a character I don't actually fully know how to pronounce. It's Shah? Maybe it's Shah? I'm going to be honest, right? I don't know the difference between these two characters. I don't know. It's from, at least in Russian, right? In other languages, like Belarusian and Bulgarian and Ukrainian, maybe Ukrainian, don't quote me on that, it's different, right? It's either sh or sh. So if you were to write Khrushchev, it would be Khrushchev. But in modern Russian, it's just a sh but longer. It's just a sh but longer. Anyways, that's beside the point. In my transliteration for version 0.2, if you want to type it, you have to do S with cedilla. So although we have the S and then the S with Charon, S with cedilla is gonna be how you're gonna type this Shah character. However, in the 0.3 version, if you want to type this character, you have to do C with cedilla because C with cedilla or S with cedilla does not exist on the mnemonic keyboard or international keyboard. Sorry. If you want to type this character using the mnemonic keyboard, you type in the letter S and then the letter C. If you type in SC, you get Shah. Pronunciation, I guess it's just sh, but longer. Similar characters. I mean, I guess it's pretty similar to the you know what I mean? But like, or to the Shaw, but this is Shaw, I guess. I don't know. Transliteration influence from creative interpretation. There's no specific reason I decided that it should be S with cedilla to represent this character. I just thought, well, S with Hatchek is taken. S is already using to represent the letter S. So how about S with cedilla? I just kind of looked at it and was like, this one makes sense. So basically what I'm saying is you're not going to see any other transliteration that's going to represent this character with S with cedilla. Next up, we have soft sound or sorry, this is not soft. This is hard. This is hard sound. Um, this is probably the biggest leap in logic you're going to have to take with all of these because I'm representing this using the the Latin letter W. Why the letter W? Honestly, it's because we haven't used the letter W for anything else, and I want to use it. And the reason why I don't want to use the version that other people use is because whenever they use it, they use two apostrophes, which to me, there's two reasons I don't want to use apostrophes. A is because I would like to be able to type with actual apostrophes and words that I want them to be used. B, because the double apostrophe kind of looks like a quotation mark, so it looks like you're having a quote in the middle of your sentence, which I don't like. And C, there's no nuance between the capital and lowercase version of hard sign and soft sign, and I want there to be. In Russian, there is a difference between, at least like Unicode wise, there is a difference between the capital hard sign and the lowercase hard sign. It's not just only the lowercase hard sign, they have a capital hard sign, so I'm going to be sticking with that. Anyways, if you want to type this using the mnemonic keyboard, you use the back tick, which is in the top left corner of your keyboard if you didn't know. Pronunciation, it has no sound because this letter isn't a sound. It is basically a letter that is meant to represent that a word should be hard or that a consonant should be hard in a case where it's normally soft, or at least that's how I think it's used. The actual name of this thing is something along the lines of Tvordisnak. Tvordisnak. Can you tell I'm not Russian? Tvordisnak. I'm trying my best, okay? Again, a creative interpretation. There's no reason that this should be W or whatever, but I'm just going with it, right? Next up, we have Uy. So Uy is going to be represented as Y with acute accent. Sorry, I forgot that. Y with acute accent. Now, you might be wondering why not the letter Y. I'll get to that in a little bit later. So, if you want to type this with the mnemonic keyboard, you press the letter Y. Pronunciation is something like Uy. That might be not great, but I'm not Russian, so, it's something like Uy. Similar characters, none. There's not really anything that looks like this that is pronounced like Uy, because it's a very unique character, at least in outside of the Cyrillic alphabet, or out of languages that don't use the Cyrillic alphabet. And it's not to be confused with the letters B and L, because it kind of looks like a lowercase b and a lowercase l next to each other, or a lowercase b and a capital I next to each other. But it's not BL or BI, it is Uy. And my transliteration is influenced from BS 2979 1958. It's not the same as BS, because in BS they use Y with Macron, but I'm using Y with acute accent. And the reason why I'm using Y with acute accent and not Y with Macron is because you can't type Y with Macron using most things. You can't use international keyboard, and you can't use the standard iPhone stuff. So that's why. We're getting near the end. We have the soft sound. So soft sound is going to be represented by the letter Q. Again, I did this completely just because we haven't used the letter Q and I want to use the letter Q, so now we're using the letter Q. If you want to type it using the mnemonic keyboard, you have to use the epistrophe or apostrophe. The name is Myakkisnak. So remember earlier when I mentioned that this character Ge is sometimes pronounced like H? This is one of the words. This is one of the few words where it's Myakkisnak. It's not Myakkisnak, it's Myakkisnak. Oops. Not to be confused with the letter B. So this is the soft sign. This is just meant to represent that a consonant at the end should be soft as opposed to being hard. Near the end here we have eh. So is basically yeah, but there's no ambiguity as to whether it's pronounced or yeah. So for example, in some words, you might use here. Let me rephrase that. Because that was kind of confusing. So this character makes the same exact sound as the character does in cases where it's and not yeah. The reason why you would use this character is because if this letter were to be at the beginning of a word, then you know that it's and not yeah. That's why. So in order to make sure we don't lose that ambiguity and this remains a special character, we're going to be using the Latin letter ash. Ash is a character that's used in, I think, Icelandic and maybe some other languages. On the mnemonic keyboard, if you want to get this character, you have to do right alt plus backtick, then A. Pronunciation is like as I mentioned. Not to be confused with none, because this is a pretty distinct character. It doesn't really look like anything else. Kind of looks like a number 3 or Cyrillic Z, but not really. Creative interpretation is my influence because AE is pretty distinct. I think this is the second to last character. We have U. So U is going to be represented by the letter U with a circumflex. Similar to the character for yeah and the character for yo and the character for ya, it's going to be having a circumflex. Spoiler alert for ya, because ya I think is the last character. But using the mnemonic keyboard, if you want to get this character, you have to type in the letter Y, then the letter U. Pronunciation is U. The character it kind of looks like an I and then a dash and then an O, but it's not I dash O, it is U. Transliteration is influenced from these sources. And last but not least, we have the character Ya. Ya is going to be represented by A with circumflex. If you want to type this character on the mnemonic keyboard, you type in the letter Q, or you can type Y then A. Similar characters, none. There isn't really anything that looks like this that's pronounced like Ya. It's not always pronounced like Ya, by the way. There are some words, like there's a word I think pitno. It's not piatno, it's pitno, whatever. And it's not to be confused with the Latin R because it kind of looks like a backwards R, doesn't it? All right. And that's it for this recording here. There's a little bit of extra information I'm going to tag on to a companion video, but that is the transliteration. I hope you guys enjoyed and tune in for part 2.